What's up, y'all? My name is Philip Jordan. I am the host of the SEC Brawl podcast. For more SEC content, go to the description below and subscribe to the podcast to get the full episode. Joining me right now is David Waters. He is the host of the Gators Breakdown podcast.
Yeah, something I believe we talked about when I had you on when we previewed the SEC championship game was talking about with Florida on defense, communication issues. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something, if you'd had a spring ball last year, maybe that stuff doesn't happen. So that could be, I'm sure that's going to be a big emphasis on with Todd Grantham and this defense going into the spring, just kind of working on those things. So when the season comes around, those issues won't pop up as frequently.
Yep, that was the first question I asked Dan Mullen for the in the pre-spring press conference. What was the issues on defense and what needs to be fixed? And he said it was the communication issues. It was getting the play call, and he said that they felt too comfortable at times. They got too lackadaisical with that process, and just getting the play call from the booth to the coaches, and then from the coaches to the players. It was just all three phases of that were not good. And you could tell, Florida looked as lost in Game 12 as they looked in Game 1 as far as getting lined up and being able to handle some up-tempo offenses. And inexcusably just looked lost. There were a lot of players on that defense that were experienced, that had enough experience in this defense where they should not have looked that lost. And you probably do go back and say, well, if they had a normal spring practice, would those issues have shown up?
Yeah, because coming into last year, and we talked about this before, that was not really something you saw out of the Florida defense under Todd Grantham. Even in previous stops, he has had some issues at other places, but that was not one of them. So that was just one of the weird things last season with the Florida defense.
Yeah, it's weird. How does it get more complicated in year 3? That's the conundrum there of what happened. So that's why a lot of fan base was ready to move on from Todd Grantham. Is how can an issue like that creep up in year 3 and no improvement from Game 1 to Game 12 on defense? But he's bought himself another year, and we'll see how much he can improve this Florida defense after an historically bad year last year.
And, they got a couple additions out of the transfer portal, Antonio Shelton from Penn State, and a guy I'm familiar with, Daquan Newkirk from Auburn, coming over. I guess he traded in one orange and blue for the other in the SEC. Just, overall thoughts on those guys coming into Florida and how you see them fitting with this defense.
Instant plug and play for what Florida needs. Florida lost Kyrie Campbell and Tadarius Slayton at defensive tackle last year, and there was a big gap. You were looking at a guy who was a true freshman last year. He's 5-star, don't get me wrong. So he's still going to be an integral part this year. And Gervin Dexter being your most experienced defensive tackle that played the most snaps if you go back to last year. So Florida needed a lot of help because there was a gap there from Campbell and Slayton to guys who just didn't have a whole lot of experience. So, the trio now of Shelton, Newkirk, and Gervin Dexter gives Florida a lot of bodies to start with at defensive tackle. And the most important thing is, to me, it leaves Zachary Carter, who's probably going to be all SEC. I'd say he's probably second team for 2021 for Florida. It allows him to play defensive end and stay at defensive end. He had to play defensive tackle last year when Kyrie Campbell took the first few games off of last year. He wasn't on the field, so they had to slide just for bodies. They had to slide Zachary Carter inside, and he's a better outside player. He's a better defensive end. And now by getting those transfers, it allows Zachary Carter to stay at defensive end, the position that suits his strength the best. So, this Florida front now would look like before the transfers, you were worried about what Florida was going to do up the middle on defensive line. Now you got Shelton, a guy who has plenty of experience from Penn State, kind of that emotional fire him up that type of guy, and Newkirk from Auburn, who had to battle a whole lot of injuries, and last year was pretty much the first year he played all throughout the season and bouncing back from I think it was Achilles injury that he had. So you hope that the season, his full season at Auburn last year, is something he can build on as a grad transfer for Florida.
Yeah, look, and I'll just say this: he got to watch some pretty good ones when he was hurt the year before. At Auburn, Marlon Davis and Derek Brown are really good. So he got to hopefully soak in just seeing how them guys operate. And you got to think with defensively too going into next season. Of course, offensively, Florida's got talent on offense, and you got Emory Jones there at quarterback, but you got to figure out your new playmakers. Who's the new guys when you lose, Tony and Pitts like they did, and among others. Defensively, I think that's going to be real interesting with Florida going into through the spring into fall camp and into the season. Can this defense step up and be better, kind of help out that offense as they're figuring things out to start next season?
Yeah, and I said overall the defense probably didn't get better from game 1 to game 12, but you did see single players probably get better from that stretch. And that's one reason I think this spring is huge for two players. Mamu Diabate, who got shifted to linebacker last year. He's more of a edge rusher, pass rusher his first year. And they switched him to linebacker last year. He did that position switch without a spring. And so you could kind of tell why there might be a slow start in kind of a transitioning to a new role. And he played better as the year went on. He was probably a strength at linebacker toward the end of the year. And then Trey Dean, who 2 years ago in his first season, 2018, was forced into playing cornerback when Marco Wilson went down with an injury. And then when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that same year, he goes off to the NFL draft, and Trey Dean's now going to play nickel in 2019. Wasn't a really good fit. So in 2020, Trey Dean goes and plays safety. And as I said, as the year went on, you could see where he probably had the biggest play for the Florida defense in the SEC championship game versus Alabama. He picks the pass off, gets hit really, really hard, and then fumbles after that interception, but had the best play for the Florida defense in that game. But you could see inclinations of those two guys getting better in their new roles. So now they have a spring to build upon that. So that's two players there who I think did get better as the season went on last year and now get to build on those late season performances that hopefully translate now with the spring. They can go and be leaders. Trey Dean at safety and Mamu Diabate at linebacker. But this spring is big for Florida secondary. Two new coaches back there. Torian Gray, Ron English are gone. In comes Wesley McGriff, another guy from Auburn. Jules Montanar from USF. Their guys are going to coach the secondary. And, as I mentioned Kyer Elam earlier, but you've got a lot of questions back there in that Florida secondary. Trey Dean, Rashad Torrance, probably the two guys that's going to start at safety. But Florida's got to go find an opposite cornerback, opposite of Elam, that they can go count on. Early enrollee, Jason Marshall, 5-star there from Miami Palmetto. Looks the part through 3 practices. It's hard to glean too much from Instagram live posts that we have to watch for these for these first 3 practices. But with all the change, all the coaching changes, all the face changes, player changes for the Gators, I think you got to look at Jason Marshall as a guy, as an early enrollee. If he can step in and be the guy opposite cornerback of Kyer Elam, even as a freshman, I think you can feel pretty good about that for Florida.